One of the other ways that I think God equips us is through our own unique individual design. Like He created each one of us. He gave us a personality. He gave us a bent, things we're good at, our strengths. Don't compare yourself to another mom. I'm not as creative as she is. I'm not as, organized. I'm not as whatever. God gave you your children to raise, and He knows your gifts and your strengths and your, how you operate. So He can use those gifts and abilities He's placed in you to educate your children.
Hi, welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast. This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschool journey. Let me take just a minute to ask you to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch, including YouTube. If this podcast has been encouraging to you, please leave us a good review. Each review really helps. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well. I'm excited to welcome back my dear friend and colleague, Nancy Manos, to the podcast. Nancy has two daughters that she homeschooled from preschool through high school. She has been involved in homeschool leadership in a wide variety of capacities. This weekend, she's actually traveling to speak at a Homeschool Moms event on the topic of equipped for this good work. Nancy is a wealth of information and inspiration when it comes to the fears that often haunt us as homeschool moms. So welcome, Nancy. We're excited to hear about what you're going to be sharing with these women this weekend. And I thought it would be a great topic for us to talk about today with homeschool moms.
Well, thanks, Ann. It's always great to be with you. Yeah, I'm super excited. I've spoken at this event in Tucson a few times over the years, and it's just always such a lovely gathering of homeschool moms. And I love this topic. I feel like as I'm watching Facebook chats and things like that, that moms are really worried. And just like we always have been, right? The perennial, the eternal concerns about, am I doing enough? Am I going to fail my children?
Am I
How do I?
ruining my kids when we really want to
Yes.
bless them,
Great. So that's what we're going to talk about today, which I love. I think God wants us to know that He has equipped us for this important work of raising and educating our children.
So the goal of this is really to help you who are still in the trenches overcome some of the fears that plague us by Nancy giving you just advice on how to be equipped. And Nancy is a wealth of information on helping us deal with the fears that plague us. And one thing, Nancy, I have realized over the years is these fears are the same, whether you started homeschooling in 1984 or 2025. And I also learned that they're the same whether you live in Columbia, South Carolina, or Japan. When Joe and I went to speak at a conference, a couple of conferences in Japan, I was talking to the women through a translator, and their questions were all these same things. Am I ruining my children? How do I cope with all the pressure? What do I say to my mother-in-law who hates this? All of those things that we deal with now. It surprised me that those don't change.
Right. Yeah. It's true everywhere. From younger moms to older homeschool moms who've been, maybe you have 10 or 12 children and you've been homeschooling for 30 years. We still kind of deal with the same questions, I think. And like you said, around the globe. Doesn't really matter your
That's
culture, where
right.
you live. We all want to do a good job for our kids, right?
That's exactly right. Well, I want you to tell us a little bit about the event you're going to and what you're going to be speaking on. You have an introduction. I've been reading through your notes, and I've just been cheering for you and with you while reading through your notes for the conference. So tell us a little bit. I love the story you share in the introduction. It's really about how you came to homeschool.
Yes, yeah. So we were, young parents still living in Minnesota, and our girls were maybe 2 and 4. They were very young, and we were spending time with some friends from church. They had boys that were a little bit older than our girls, and there was just something really unique about their family. And we hadn't decided what we were doing. We hadn't really given much thought to school yet. Olivia was still fairly young, and Alex was, a toddler. And so what we noticed about this family was their boys, we would walk in and it would be like, "How was your day, Mrs. Manos?" And "Mr. Manos, how was your trip?" Because he traveled a lot during that time. And just through this friendship, we got to see this interaction with these young boys and their parents and how this family really enjoyed one another's company. The kids could talk to adults just as well as they could to children. And so what we discovered about them was they were a homeschool family, and we kind of fell in love with it from spending time with them, and we decided to homeschool from the beginning and never looked back.
Was that the first family you had ever come into contact with who homeschooled?
Yes, yeah. There were a few at church, and they all kinda had that same special quality, but this one family we spent the most time with.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. That reminds me of something that Caleb talks about, and Stephanie, his wife, did too when she was on the podcast. That really, as homeschool moms, especially if you've been at it for a while, invite families into your home and let them get to know your kids and let them see what a homeschool family looks like. It doesn't have to be anything super planned or prepared. It can be cookies and a play date, but it really is amazing the impact that one homeschool family can have on another family who's looking for solutions to the educational issue.
It's so true. We have one funny story when we were at a church where I was working in the tech booth and my kids were serving on the worship team and, in youth and in the main service, and this young man that worked in the tech booth with me, he goes, "I used to think that homeschoolers were weird, but your girls are really cool." And I just thought, "They're just normal kids."
That's
But then talking with him, he said his only experience with homeschoolers was the ones who it didn't really work out, and they came back to public school, and they were still trying to figure out how to fit in. And so it was really funny. I thought, "I think they're cool too." But that we could be an example. We're just a normal family. We love the Lord. We just happen to be doing education at home as part of raising our kids.
that's right. Well, you share a verse at the beginning of your workshop, and you have a special an emphasis in that verse. Will you share that with us, Nancy?
Yes, this is one of my favorite verses just as a woman of God, but I think it fits so well as a parent and as a homeschool mom. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17 says, "All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man," and I put in parentheses, or woman, "of God may be complete, thoroughly equipped for every good work." And I think we would all agree that raising our children and educating them is a good work. And we can trust that God has equipped us for this journey.
That's right, and it is work, and we cannot deny the fact that homeschooling is really a lot of work, but it's a
Right.
good work.
Yeah, it's so true. So I'm excited to get to go. Like I said, I'm going to Tucson to speak to this group of women. They're having a tea and worship, and just there's something, I know you love to speak at events and speak, whether it's retreats or homeschool conventions or whatever, but there's something about being together in person,
Yes,
um,
there is.
and just getting to pray together and talk and, those kind of things, and so I love
It
this topic though, that
it
that
is
God.
true. We've gotten so used to virtual, and I'm so thankful for that aspect because it allows us to do the podcast. But you should really make an effort to be with homeschooling families from time to time. A
Yes,
convention or a women's retreat, an event like Nancy's speaking at, just because there is something so necessary about being together. And, you're gonna run into families who have mastered the things you're worried about, and you're gonna meet families that need the information you have. And so it's really I can remember Joe and I had been speaking at an event, and we just stopped at a McAllister's or something to get something to eat on the way home. We were starving, and this woman was there, and she heard us talking about homeschooling, and she said, "Can I join you? I live with my grown kids because my husband has passed away, and I really want to give them this information about homeschooling." I mean, you that's not those are chance encounters, I quote chance, things that the Lord appoints, meetings that the Lord appoints for us to speak into the lives of others and have them to speak into our lives.
it's true. You never know who you're
That's right.
around, who you're next to at the homeschool convention, who's standing next to you in line to buy some resources or waiting
That's
for a workshop to start and you just get chatting, and it's amazing how God shows up. I love
right.
that.
That's right. I know it is special. And it is that I was reading a book the other day and it was talking about ministry by presence. And we minister each other a lot by presence, just by presence. We minister to our kids by our presence in their home. And sometimes the idea of presence has really been denigrated in our society, especially since COVID. So, okay, so Nancy, tell us a little bit about this idea of being equipped and some of the aspects that are involved or character aspects that are involved in it.
Yeah, well, I feel like God equips us in a lot of different ways, and I have a little list, that helps me. He equips us through His Word, obviously. His Word is Him speaking to us. So when we spend time in the Word, when we spend time praying, we grow in wisdom and we grow in patience, and we get God's heart for the picture or for our adventure here with our children. We get to see our kids through his eyes the more we spend time, with him. Sometimes when you spend time in close proximity with your children all the time, what you see most is their idiosyncrasies and their quirks and the things that irritate you. And we need to be reminded that they are, made in the image of God and that they're made for a purpose. And we have this amazing gift, this opportunity to shepherd them, to nurture the gifts in them so that they can grow up to go and do kingdom things. And so spending time in the word to me, I think is the most important way that God equips us. But I think he also equips us through challenges. Have you ever struggled at something? And especially if you're struggling as a family. I've heard stories about camping. I'm not a camper. I'm a, Hyatt kind of girl. Um, but, you
You're
go
here.
through a hardship. Maybe the tent blew down, or maybe there's a storm that blew in, or, whatever. But when you have to pull together as a family, you grow in all sorts of ways: discipline, creativity, problem solving. You grow in patience, so there's lots of ways that the challenges that come up, that God can equip us through those things. I'm not saying He brings the challenges, but He walks with us, and can use them to shape our character and to shape our, just the way we respond to things.
I was doing a study once of David and Moses and some other Old Testament character because I was trying to tie this in for a homeschooling talk I was giving. And I really did realize that God is a lot more concerned about our faithfulness and our faith over and above our comfort. Not
Yes.
that He's not going to comfort us and help us, but I guess it's the notion of feeling like we always need to be comfortable with something we're doing. There is a lot of discomfort and not being comfortable, know?
Right. Well, and you can't judge your homeschool experience based on, did you have a whole year of perfect days where everybody woke up, brushed their teeth, made their bed, cleaned their room, showed up at the dining room table and said, "We're ready for school, Mom." That
And
never happened to me one
that's right,
time.
and then said, "Oh, thank you so much for teaching me this
Right?
year."
So it isn't about the perfection. It isn't about this idealistic view that we may, romanticize that homeschooling is, because we're human beings living in a space together, navigating all of our humanity, right? So I think that we need to be okay with the fact that this world, sometimes things are messy, sometimes they're hard, but God is faithful. And I love that we grow closer as a family, but we also grow in our own walk with the Lord. So another way that I think that God equips us is through community. Um, if you're homeschooling in isolation, I would encourage you. You don't need 50 friends, but a couple of friends who are on this journey also. When it's a hard day, then you've got somebody you can text or pick up the phone and go, "I'm struggling today, pray for me." Or "What do I do in this situation?" Another mom has been through what you're going through and can share a tip, a pointer, a hack, something that worked for them. But we shouldn't be doing this alone. Because you don't need to. There's so many opportunities, right?
That's right.
Co-ops and field trips and
Yes, yes, and support groups and state organizations, all of those
yeah,
have varying types of support. But
right.
I want to go back to what you talked about. You don't have to have a lot of friends. I know I've shared this before, but it's really been on my mind today. I have two dear friends, Donna and Marnie, and we started praying together when our children were little. And then all of us ended up homeschooling, and we prayed together throughout our homeschooling journey. Well, the amazing thing is now that our kids are all grown, we still get together. And what do we find ourselves praying for the most? Our children and our grandchildren. And it's so amazing to have somebody who has walked through all those steps with me, all those phases of life that can still pray for my children and my grandchildren and speak into my life. And because of that rich history, um, I just think their prayers are amazingly effective, and I really don't know what I would do without them.
Well, and how neat that your hearts are knit together
Yeah,
by praying
yes, that's
together,
a great way to put it. Yes,
right?
it's over years and years and years.
Yep.
So those friends you make today may be some of the closest friends you carry through life.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm thankful. And you never know where you'll meet them. Sometimes you just need maybe you're an introvert and you're like, "I do not wanna go on a field trip. I do not wanna go out and do whatever uncomfortable thing." But if you say yes to something that may seem a little outside your comfort zone, you may make your new best friend there, or your kids may find it's amazing how God meets you when you're willing to take one little step of faith and say yes. Don't say yes to everything, because then you'll be running like crazy. Um, and then there's no homeschool because 'cause you're just running around. So I always laugh, Zan, people say, like, they're afraid their kids are gonna miss out. Everybody thinks that. They're gonna miss out on the prom and sports and friends, and they're gonna be weird and whatever. But the reality is there's so many opportunities that we actually have to be intentional about staying home sometimes.
Yes, yes,
There's just
yes.
so much, which is wonderful to live in a world today where there's so many opportunities. Um, you can find other good friends that are also homeschooling.
And, I think that, I think we're engaged in life schooling, and it can be so interesting and fascinating with the things you were just saying, field trips and, um, service together and all of those things. And it's really the foundation for a rich, rich life. I can remember when my second son was in high school and my daughter was 9, and they both had serious dental work done in 1 week when Joe was out of town, and we laid around this house. It was miserable. And John looked at me and he said, "We usually are so involved in so many good things. If people homeschool like this, I know why they hate it." And he didn't feel good either. But, those efforts you make to be involved in good things with other people, your kids will really appreciate as they get older. And it's like you said, Nancy, it doesn't take 1,000 people. It doesn't take an activity every day. Just, a little bit of prayer and intentionality.
Yeah. And you know what? If you try something out and you're like, "Oh, this isn't for us," it's okay. You don't have to keep doing it. So I just love the flexibility of homeschooling. One of the other ways that I think God equips us is through our own unique individual design. Like He created each one of us. He gave us a personality. He gave us a bent, things we're good at, our strengths. Um, and so God's going to use you. Don't compare yourself to another mom. I'm not as creative as she is. I'm not as organized. I'm not as whatever. Um, because God gave you your children to raise, and He knows your gifts and your strengths and how you operate. And so He can use those gifts and abilities He's placed in you to educate your children.
That's right. It's funny. I sat on a mom's panel at a small support group meeting in Camden, South Carolina over the holidays. And there were 5 of us. And I think 2 or 3 of them were public school teachers. One woman had a high school diploma. One woman had a child who hated school, and she was one of the teachers. And so it was a constant struggle. And it was really interesting to see how different they all were. One was creative, one was very organized, and one, who was also a teacher, was just Miss Lucy Goosey. And so that was so good for me to see because all of their children, are doing well as adults. And so you're right. I look at Nancy, I look at you sometimes and I think you are so organized. Lord, why did you not make me like Nancy Manos? And so, but you can't live your life there. You need to appreciate your friend's strengths and
Yes,
then be
yeah.
thankful for the
And your
life.
own gifts. We each have our own gifts.
So so Nancy, one of the points you make is that we all suffer from doubts and feeling like we're not enough for the task.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all feel like we're not enough. So how do you
Yes.
answer that?
Well, again, it really goes back to spending time in God's word because when we know Him, that we're walking this journey with Him, with all of the resources of heaven at our disposal, right? That we are not alone in this. It doesn't depend on me alone because it's me and Jesus, right? And I just think that the more time we spend with Him, the more we see Him move. He wants to move on our behalf. He wants to provide for us. He wants to show us the way. I always think back to some of the times, you've heard this, you've met my daughter, Olivia. Um,
Yes, she is
as a first
fabulous, by the way.
I adore her, but she was hard. We had a hard when she was growing up because she's just like me, type A, strong leader woman, and we butted heads her whole childhood. But I think, if I had said, "This is too hard. There's too much," like we struggle every day, and put her in school, we never would have overcome that. Um, I'm not saying, we would still be close, I'm sure, but there's something about persevering where God shows up when you stick and hang in there for the long haul. And we just figured out I had to pray a lot. I'm sure as she grew in her faith, she probably prayed a lot. How do we navigate this? Because we didn't want to it wasn't that we disliked each other, it's that we both wanted to be in charge. Um just as she came into her teen years, she was a leader like I am, and I was stubborn and she was stubborn, and, there were times, I think I've said this before on your show, where James would be like, "Time out. Olivia, go to your room. Mommy, go to your room." And then he would have to negotiate a peace treaty because
Yeah.
but we had to learn how to navigate our our strong preferences for things and how to love one another, and so I just think as we spend time with God and as we're dedicated to good relationships in our family, we're going to figure things out, right? Some of it's trial and error. Some of it, there's hurt feelings, and you get to apologize again today. You know,
Yeah.
to be good apologizers,
Yeah.
good forgivers.
Yes, good repenters.
I'm looking at, these comments on Facebook. There's a lot of moms who've pulled their kids out of school, and it's maybe their first year or their second year, and they haven't quite got their rhythm yet. And I do think that there's an arc, like a 3 year you need a good few years for them to see you as the teacher, to get in a homeschool rhythm that works for your family. But don't judge your homeschool success by today's challenge. That's, I guess, what I
Mm.
wanna say
Oh,
is it might
that's a
be a
good
hard
point.
day
Yes.
or a hard week or a hard month, maybe even a hard year, but you're looking at the long haul, right? Um, so we're in it. We're in it for the long haul, and over that time, we grow, God shows up, and I don't know, we grow closer.
Boy, that is for sure. That is for sure. And as we struggle together, we grow together.
Yeah.
One thing you talk about that I want to make sure we don't miss is the price we pay to homeschool. S
Yes.
so I
We
know
do, don't we?
Rick Green, I can remember I was speaking with Rick Green at I think at THSC, at a breakfast or somewhere, and he said his mother never felt like it was a burden, that, it was a gift, and it was just a gift to be able to homeschool the kids. I really admire that because it
Yeah,
was a gift, but at times it was a hard gift. And it's not that I loved my kids any less, but it was homeschooling was hard at times. And so talk
sure.
a little bit about the price we pay as homeschooling moms, not as martyrs, but realistically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a good reminder is that we can choose how we view our homeschool, right? If you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't want to, we can have a day like that, and maybe you go do a field trip or you go to the park, but it can't be every day. So we have to condition our mind, our words that we're speaking. This is a gift, it is a blessing and an opportunity. So I think it's really important to acknowledge we are sacrificing. We have to die to self. Wouldn't your flesh like to live on the couch eating good food, watching Netflix all day? Like, that's a fun day,
Yeah,
but you can't live like that, right?
that's right.
We have to put our kids' needs, not ahead of our own or to the detriment of our well-being, but when you're raising children, especially little children, they require a lot of energy, attention, um, and bedtime is a relief, right? But acknowledging the price that we pay to homeschool, I think there's wisdom in that. Um, you know, you're paying for your children's curriculum and extracurriculars and probably doing it on a single income, or maybe you're able to work part-time in homeschool. But homeschooling is a full-time job, right? Um,
Yes, it is. It is.
it's a lot. It's a big commitment. And so, there's a physical cost, um, the weight of taking on the responsibility of your child's education. It's good to acknowledge that. There's nobody else to blame if it goes off the rails, right?
Yeah,
And so
that's
I
right.
think that's where it just drives us back to our knees and where we ask God,
Always.
help
That's
us.
right. That's
If you're
right.
struggling, if you don't have a solution, he wants to meet you there and provide what you need.
Yep, the
So,
sanctifying process of homeschooling for moms and dads, but I think especially moms in some ways, is really true because every day, I mean, I just felt like almost every day of my homeschooling, I found myself lacking in some area. And
well,
it
yeah,
was
it shines brightly, right, when you're in the middle of
yes,
it. "Oh, I'm missing
yes.
I could use help here, I'm lacking here." Yeah.
So, and Paul gives us great advice where he says to rejoice, not to be okay, but to glory in our infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon us. And, I had that realization one day when I was really grappling with the Lord over whether to homeschool in high school or not. And I was really afraid of that task. And and that verse just came back to my mind, and it was so refreshing because I realized for the first time that every time I saw a weakness or an inadequacy or a limitation in myself, I didn't have to turn in my homeschool mom button. That I could really go to the Lord for his wisdom and power and resources that are totally apart from my own.
It's
So,
so good. I think I love that our weaknesses become like a place where God's strength can shine through.
yeah.
So it's
Well,
good. It's okay that we have weaknesses, right?
you know Mike Knott, my fearless
Yes.
leader, but Mike always says that our weaknesses are a magnet for God's grace, and I
Yes.
love that analogy because, man, it's just right there on us when His grace is when we need it.
It's so good. It's so good. So we just, there's times where it can be exhausting to be with your children 24/7. Um, they might be tired of being with you 24/7. Who knows? Um, but look for ways to take care of yourself so you have the strength and energy and grace and joy. We should have joy in our homeschool. James was fantastic. He traveled a lot, but when he was home, he would put the kids to bed. He's still to this day, 35 years later, my dish man. I don't, I clean up as I cook, but then he does all the dishes and
Yes, yes, it's so nice.
so it's just figuring out ways to make sure that you're also getting some downtime, maybe you have a bunch of little kids and they're always, touching you and, "Hey, mom. Hey, mom. Hey, mom." Maybe you just need a couple of hours where no one can say mom. That's okay too.
Yes, that is true. That is true. In the day before co-ops and everything with homeschooling, I remember the Lord just brought this young man from our church, and he was a teenager who just loved the Lord, but he would come get the boys, my boys who were probably 7 and 9, 8 and 10 at the time, and come take them for an afternoon. He'd take them to swim or play ball, and they'd always have a little Bible study together. And that was the bit, that was the best little bit of money I ever spent in my life because sometimes you just need that that time just to rejuvenate a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. I think we take care of ourselves so we can take really good care of our kids, which is amazing.
One thing we talked about, Nancy, is God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. And I know that you often
Yes.
talk about homeschooling being a calling. Will you
Yes.
explain that to us?
Yeah, well, I mean, our children are a gift from him, right? And we talk about this all the time, that the gift of time, we buy back time with our children when we choose to homeschool. And, he's given us our children. He didn't give them to the state. He didn't give them to some institution. Not to say that we can't get help from other places. Um, but what a gift to have children and what an honor to disciple them, to raise them to know and love him. And so I do feel like it is a calling to be a parent. It's a calling to homeschool. And just how he shows up to meet us there is so powerful to me. I love that he's entrusted these children to us. They don't actually belong to us. They belong to him. And it's a stewardship that we have.
So, as we close, let's talk for just a minute about practical equipping for the journey. What do you mean by
Yes.
that, and how can we do that?
Oh, such a good question. I think I love the word. So this is a good one too. Hebrews 13:20 and 21 says, "Now may the God of peace," which I just love that. Like, don't you want to start in a place of peace? "Make you complete in every good work to do his will, working in you what is well-pleasing in his sight through Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory forever and ever." So when we can view, whether it's scrubbing toilets or washing dishes or lesson planning or, planning the science experiment and making sure we have all the supplies needed, that we're doing this work as unto the Lord, right? For his glory that he's given us. So I think some of the things that really were helpful to me and can be helpful to you are to keep your eyes on Jesus first.
Mm, amen.
But
And
I
not the
love this.
storm. I love the way you put that.
Oh,
Is,
yes.
it's because it's so easy to put your eyes on the storm.
Right. What's not working? What well, and, like, I struggled with this as a mom with Olivia. If she was disrespectful or whatever, like, whatever we were dealing with when she was a kid, I would focus on the character flaw and miss the relationship. And so, we don't want to focus on the problem more than the solution, which God is gonna provide. So you're right. Keep your eyes on Jesus, not on the storm. It helps to homeschool with the end in mind. So it helped me when I got a hold of this idea when the girls were fairly young. When they graduated and became adults, and I looked back on my homeschool journey, how did I want to feel about it? What did I want to have accomplished? And then I could be reminded of that every day. Okay, so if in 10 years when they graduate, I want them to know and love the Lord, to have a good work ethic, to know how to research, to be good communicators, whatever success looked like to me. If I knew that in 10 years I want that to be the result, then I can make choices today. Be diligent, be consistent, those kind of things. So homeschool with the end in mind. What do you want the end to look like? And then make choices today.
So, Nancy, as we close, what words of encouragement and wisdom, anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to share with people? You're so good. I mean, I love the way you homeschooled, and I love Olivia. And, you did so many amazing things with your children, but it wasn't easy. And I know there were times you wanted to quit. There sure were times I wanted to quit, like, every day at lunch.
Absolutely. Can we go on a field trip
Yeah,
instead of homeschooling
yeah,
today?
that's
Um, I was one of those weird parents that once I got a hold of this, I was in till the end. So quitting wasn't necessarily, but there were seasons where I realized I could do better. I could show up more. I could be more relational. Instead of like just get through and I wasn't really a heavy taskmaster with work, but we got through our schoolwork every day. But it's not about completing a curriculum. Curriculum's a tool you get to use, right? And it's great, and we wanna give them a good academic experience. We want them to be well educated, good readers, understand history and the Bible and things like that. So we wanna give them a good education, but we don't wanna give them a good education at the in sacrifice relationship and joy. Like, there should be joy. This should not be misery and drudgery. So, but the one thing I wanted to say, you had asked that question, one more thing. Look for the things that are causing stress, strife, conflict, irritation. Like, what's something that you could change today? Is there a system you could put in place to smooth something out? Like, where can you remove friction so that you can enjoy this amazing experience with your kids?
I think you're right. We're just always we just always have room for change and improvement and resilience. That's one thing, Nancy. My father-in-law died at 100. I think his secret to success, he's the most resilient person I've ever known. He loved the Lord. He lost a wife, a daughter. I mean, he was so resilient. And when I look at you, I see that same resilience and the strength that comes from it. I really appreciate that about you. Do you have any words to share about that before we go? The importance of resilience and what that even means?
Well, I think yes. Thank you. That's very kind of you. You're so sweet. I think we expect when we become a Christian that life's going to be easy and flawless and perfect and sunshine and rainbows, and it doesn't work that way because we live in a fallen world. It and I think if we just expect that it's okay if things aren't perfect, that when things get hard, we have an opportunity to quit or push through. And if you'll just stick with it a little bit longer, whatever the with it is, um, God is faithful to meet you there, and it's amazing how just on the other side of your obedience is a breakthrough, a reward, some fruit, whether it's in your relationship with your children, in your own life, in your own walk with the Lord. And so I have come to the point where when things get a little rocky, I'm like, "Okay, God, what are we gonna do about this?" It's exciting to see an opportunity. I can grow as a woman in my own walk with God when I stick with something, when I persevere, when I endure hardship. Um, and he is faithful, and there's always a blessing on the other side.
I know one of your verses, I can't remember the verse itself, but it's about joy. And, I always think if I had to put one verse over you, it would be the joy of the Lord is our strength because you find joy in the journey. And I think you've taught Olivia to do that as well. And that's, that can be hard to do sometimes when you feel like everything's stacked against you at times as a homeschool mom, or it's too
Sure.
hard, or you're not enough. There's that little secret of joy in there that I often have to
Absolutely.
call you to be reminded of.
You're so funny. No, it's just neat to see that God, He wants to be there for us. He is our source, He is our strength. And, James and I had lots of hard years in our marriage, but we decided at one point we can be miserable or happy. Quitting isn't an option. What are we going to do? And we laugh every day. We have the best marriage now. And I think there's something about just embracing, I want to be a joyful person. I don't want to be complaining all day because you can.
You
There's something to
can.
complain about
Yes.
every hour of
Yes.
the day, right?
That's right.
There's
That's
something
right.
hard, there's something you don't like, there's something you wish you didn't have to do, or we can look at opportunities and where's the joy that I can find right now in this moment? And sometimes you need to have a good cry first. It's okay. Um, it we're human, right? But God. So I love that we can turn to Him whether what is the, abased or abounding? We can He's there for us. And this journey it's a beautiful thing to be able to raise and educate your children, and to have the time with them. What a gift.
Yes, I don't think you'll ever regret the time that you have with your children, which is one of the greatest gifts of homeschooling, I think. And
Yep.
but not selfishly. I mean, you still have an education that was fit for your child, and all the learning to serve together, all those things. But I think time and that joy is a real element. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you have a great retreat this weekend and
Thank you.
tell people how they can find you.
I have a website, nancymanos.com, and I've got some free resources on there, and, I'm not super active on social media, but I mean, I'm on social media, but I don't post a lot. But yeah, my website, nancymanos.com.
Great. Well, thank y'all for being with us today. I really appreciate your tuning in, and I pray that the Lord continues to bless you in your homeschooling journey. So until next time, bye. Oh, and you can find me at zantyler.com.